Well, I asked him specifically about the messaging, and I said, has anybody heard the White House say, don't come? Nope, not a single hand. And I had about 20, 16, 17-year-olds with me. And I said, what about messaging from your friends and family? Almost everybody raised their hand. They said, yeah, we've heard from our family members or friends, come over. And they said, we see images of people coming across the river. And I asked them the third message. I didn't want to say criminal organizations or drug cartels, but I said, any groups help you get here? They hesitated, but they pretty much acknowledged that there are groups, which are the criminal organizations, coming in. Yesterday, I had a call with a high-ranking Mexican official, former official that dealt with this. He told me the same thing. You know, he says it's the criminal organizations that are using the messaging from the Biden administration and turning that to their advantage so they can recruit more people.
All right, that was Congressman Henry Cuellar, Democrat out of Texas, on CNN, talking about how he met with 20 or so of the migrant kids, migrant teens coming across the border, and asked them, point blank, where are you getting the message from the Biden administration that you're not supposed to be coming over the border? And the kids replied, no, we didn't. We actually heard from our friends and families and saw on the TV and heard from the cartels, hey, come on over, it's okay. Joining us to talk about the Biden administration's little issue here, we have Robert Weiner, Democrat strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton drug czar General Barry McCaffrey. Well, Bob, as a former communications director, I'm sure you understand this issue here of the message not getting through.
Well, Biden has said don't come, and he was directly asked by a TV host, are you saying don't come? And he said don't come. But nonetheless, his policies do say otherwise. He has changed the kids in cages to kids in detention centers. He's expanded the detention centers like the Dallas Convention Center. He's made use of that. He's got a policy of 8 years until citizenship. He wants to help all the dreamers, the kids who come over, and that means it's a message to parents, send your kids over. The polls show that Biden's popularity is enormous right now. It's 60 to 75, depending on the issue, on COVID, on the economy, on jobs, on education, on infrastructure. But the one exception, which is flipped and the other way around, is on immigration, because of the fact that his message is so splattered and his policy is so splattered. And Trump had a much stronger support base on immigration, and that was his one strength. So it's a problem. It's a serious political problem. Democrats want as many Hispanics, even though it's mixed and all of that. But overall, they're because you can't equate Cuban Hispanics with San Antonio and Mexican border Hispanics. It's totally different kinds of people. But overall, Latinos are pro-democratic and Republicans don't want them in, and Democrats do. And right now, it's never the twain shall meet. That's the guts of the issue, that Republicans are afraid of these new voters and Democrats want them. So it's a very serious, non-solvable problem. There's certain things like I also couldn't figure out what's the real answer on Syria. We came up with an op-ed that said, humanitarian aid through the white helmets. But that's not an answer to what you do in Syria about Assad and his brutal, barbaric, totalitarian torture. And there's no answer here that I can see that's real. Other than you got to help the dreamers, but you got to also put maybe a timeline on them so that no new dreamers stop, and anybody who comes in after now doesn't get the help. Maybe that's a solution, so that at least there's no incentive, zero, for new dreamers to come in.
Yeah, and just that seems to be what everyone actually coming up is saying. They came up because they expect Biden to be nicer and provide much more than Trump ever would have given them. And Biden himself didn't help on the campaign trail when he said he wanted a surge of asylum seekers at the border. Yeah. So, and just this mixed messaging too from the administration. There is no crisis, everything's secure. But then you actually had Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, let slip the other day. She actually referred to it as a crisis by accident, I guess.
Well, you can use whatever word you want. It is an emergency, and it's got to be solved and stopped. They always come. And the other thing I'll say too, this is another issue where I used to agree with Phyllis Schlafly, who stopped ERA, and of course I disagree totally with that. I think that's just sexist on the part of guys who made that happen, but it's also as women like Phyllis Schlafly. But on immigration, she and I agreed on Alan Nathan's panels repeatedly on the need for a strong policy. So you've got to do something here that doesn't turn our country into an escape hatch for everybody on the planet in the millions. It can't happen. And Reagan, gave citizenship to 3 million, so that it's been done. There's history, there's precedent. But is that really where we're headed now? So I just don't have a really good answer other than you put a stop date on the dreamers and you solve the bleeding of what you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was Gallup that did a poll that said 42 million people from Central and South America would come up here if they had the opportunity. So Biden really needs to do something to make that opportunity cease, because it sure looks like one right now, the way they're talking. They're saying they won't turn. The one consistent message from the administration has been they will not turn any children around.
Yeah, and Obama was accused of being the deporter in chief, so it seems like Biden is even more aggressive on allowing things than Obama was on this issue.
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing to me, though, is that this switch that's happened seemingly between the parties. Republicans back in the early to mid 2000s didn't seem to be all on board with much immigration enforcement except for a few token gestures. And I'm just remembering that from a speech from Obama in the Senate where he's saying, oh, well, it's great and well, it's fine to build it, but the real problem is we got to stop them from getting jobs in this country and deter them. So they were really behind E-Verify and all that. But then suddenly that sort of flipped and came to the situation we have now, where it's like the Republicans who are trying to discourage the illegal immigration, whereas Democrats seem to be, in words doing it, but indeed doing the opposite.
Well, my experience, in the recent decades, as I said, is that Democrats want more, although we got hurt. There was a tilt of Republicans in Florida and some others who wanted strong law and order. So there was some of that. I remember Claude Pepper, who I worked for, and it's probably most of your listeners don't know who he was, but he was on the cover of Time magazine twice, both under Roosevelt and then when he abolished mandatory retirement, and he was called America's champion for the elderly. And I was chief of staff of the House Aging Committee. He used to say, Cuba City, Castro, no. So you have to have a strong message like that, but at least differentiate Cuban versus Latino versus Hispanic from other parts of the country.
All right, Bob Weiner, thank you for joining us. Listeners, always appreciate you being around to listen to the show as well. That is the Alan Nathan Show here on the Main Street Radio Network. You can catch us on Facebook. You can catch us on Twitter. So more even after the show. There's more to do.